Okay. Susan Bayer, welcome to Consulting Growth Insights.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. Um, there's I think a lot we can talk about. I think as you know, I work with boutique consultancies, and the large firms are out there. I mean, this kind of concept is not new to the large firms. Like just about all of them custom proprietary research. They do annual studies of all sorts. If they're multi-vertical, they do them in each vertical, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So, like the big four and even other larger firms, this is not new to them. I don't see it nearly as much as I should with the smaller firms. I think there's a lot of thinking it's too complicated, it's too expensive, it's only quote unquote top of funnel. I'm just kind of naming off all sorts of stuff that I've
Mm-hmm.
heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think any of those are actually fair or correct assumptions. So I'm hoping you can help me dispel some of those things today.
Yeah, not anymore for sure. Even if they
Yeah,
were
right.
years ago. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's true. That's true. So you've been doing this work on behalf of expertise
Mm-hmm.
organizations, so agencies, consultancies for a long time.
Yeah.
So I am looking to get a lot more of your insight here.
Happy to help if I can.
Yeah. So where maybe it would be worth starting is before we jumped on, you mentioned sort of that people often get the objective of this work incorrectly in
Mm,
terms of what they're doing. Tell me more
yeah.
about that.
So, the work that we are doing most often with experts, that could be, we do a lot of work with marketing agencies and their leaders. We do it with consultants, speakers, authors who are strategic advisors, expert advisors to their clients. Um, and that work is really to give them a data-based platform from which to talk about what they believe to be true, their perspective, their advice, etc. Um, I think a lot of people think that research like this is that its goal is to validate their opinion, right? If you've been, you're one of these experts and consultants. If you've been doing that work for any period of time, you probably have developed some fairly strongly held opinions about the right way to go about it, the wrong way to go about it, the wrong assumptions that your clients have about how to go about it. We all do have those things. Um, but I chuckle when sometimes I'll get a prospect who says, all right, we want to get some research to validate this, because research is a science. There's art to it too, but fundamentally it's a science. And the way science works is that you establish a hypothesis of how you think it's going to come out, and then you intentionally try to disprove that.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I tell clients that my job is not to prove you right. Technically speaking, my job is to try to prove you wrong.
Yeah.
Because if we can't prove you wrong, then we know you're right. If we're trying to prove you're right, we're going to find you're right. And that's where bias comes in and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And so much of that is not even, even as a researcher, I have my own bias around things, and a cognitive bias. So you can't always spot it if you're trying to prove it right. The only way to spot it is to intentionally set yourself on the road to trying to disprove it, trying to
Yeah.
prove it wrong. And then it becomes a lot more visible to you. And that's what any researcher for thought leadership research should be doing, is intentionally trying to prove you wrong. And one of two things is going to happen. And probably, in my experience, both of two things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to find some things that you don't have quite right, at least in terms of how you maybe think your prospects think about something or their prospects think about something, right?
Yeah.
You're to learn some things that are a little at variance to maybe what you expected or what was true 5 years ago. It isn't true now.
Mm-hmm.
But the second thing you're going to find is a lot of affirmation that your perspective is right. Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't be in business for very long if you weren't really helping.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, the best and the most trustworthy studies are ones that show you both of those things. So I think it's just an important mindset for people to have when they're thinking about doing your own research or hiring someone to do research for you.
Yep.
Is try to prove yourself wrong and see what happens. It's a lot more fun and impactful than just trying to make a mathematical yes man for your business.
Yeah, no, I think it's a difficult proposition for some experts out there.
Sure.
Because like you
we
said,
don't like to think we're wrong.
you and I are in business because we are most likely right at least 51% of the time, right? Otherwise we wouldn't be in business. So we're right about 51% of the things that we hold our opinions.
Yeah. And a lot of people really worry about being wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, our livelihood depends on our ability to deliver for our clients, which relies on us being right about what we're advising for them. So there's a fear about that. The interesting thing, though, is watch what happens to an audience that you are trying to build trust with, right? Watch what happens when you say, so this was interesting. I didn't expect this to come out this way, but it did. And that's making me rethink how I'm advising clients about this topic. And watch, if you had a trust meter with that audience in their seats, you would see a huge spike. Because our clients and our audiences don't just want us to be right. They want us to be accurate. They want us to keep our finger on the pulse of what's really happening, not just mired in our own belief system that's stuck in 1974 or something. Who knows, right? They want to see that we're actively taking in new information and adapting it as the world changes into our advice. So there's actually a real value in finding and talking about things that surprised you, that went against your expectations in your research. It's a tremendous trust builder with audiences. And it's something you should build your research to try to get if you can. People who disagree with you, learning something that it does not align is a golden nugget in a research study. And you're never going to get it if you or your provider are just trying to set things up so that you could show big percentages on your side of the net. Yeah, definitely. And I think, thinking it gets back to, empathy and authenticity at the end of the day, right? What you're, those are buzzwordy, fuzzy words for most people these days, but it's what, as an expert or a consultant, they're not buying. I mean, yes, they're buying your thinking, but what they're really buying is how that thinking gives them confidence in the outcomes that you're going to drive that they can potentially get. That's what they're buying. Right? And it's much more interesting for them to see you thinking on your feet in the face of different perspectives than it is for you just rattling off numbers that tell them you're perfect. That's just not very interesting for folks. And it's not very real. It's not very authentic. That's not really how the world works, even for people who know a lot about what they do and have been doing it for a long time. Yep. Yeah, for sure. Have you found, consultants, experts, agency owners, the folks that you do the work for, have you found them being difficult to convince of this? Every once in a while. Every once in a while. I mean, most of the experts I know got that way because they're intensely curious about how things work for the people that they're trying to serve in their sphere of influence, right? They're intensely curious. They're reading other people's work. They're doing a lot of research into whether there's data around this or around that. So most of the people I work with, that's not true. Sometimes we'll have a client who has a very fixed sort of worldview that they have been advising their clients based on, and a model that shows this or
Okay.
that. And if the research comes back and doesn't match their model completely, they find that threatening.
Yep.
Usually I can spot those prospects before we start working with them, because spotting them on the back end is not fun, right?
Yep.
But I can't always. And sometimes people don't really realize they're threatened until that
Yep.
happens, or they're not threatened, but whoever's running their organization is threatened.
Yep.
And sometimes it can be hard. Years and years ago, I was doing a study for a manufacturer of high-end, like luxury products. And we did a study for them to sort of understand how people thought about these products and where they looked for them, and who was influencing their decisions. And when we asked them where they buy products like this, not this particular brand, but these high-end products in this category, the number one response was Walmart. And the CEO was pissed. He was like, "We do not sell these products at Walmart. And they don't sell products at our level at Walmart." The reality is, the reason it came up is because that's where people are often, and their context changes versus what's a luxury product at Walmart versus someplace else. But the bigger issue, and I told him this, is that they don't know that. They don't know that your level of product is not available at a Walmart. That's your job to do that, right?
Yep.
So sometimes there's some backlash to what research finds, and that's just the way it is when you're a researcher. Sometimes you have some unpopular things to show.
Yep.
But most of the time, it's not an issue with the people I work with, because they've gotten where they are by being curious and absorbing new information and adapting
Yep.
to new perspectives.
Yep. I mean, I've definitely seen that doing some of the more qualitative work where
Hmm.
you present the results and they go, "Oh yeah, well that's interesting, but that's doesn't fit what we know, so we're just going to ignore that." I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
well you do that at your own risk,
Right.
because this is what these
Or,
people are
yeah,
telling
that
you.
person's stupid, or they don't know
Yeah.
what they're talking about, or whatever. That's sort of,
Yeah, I've had that too.
yeah. I mean, it's not a very, helpful way for you as an organization or a leader to look at your audience. You have to meet people where they are, and if there's something they don't understand about what
Yeah.
you do or the problem you solve, you have to start with what they do believe and where
Yeah.
they are, and then help them learn more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One last thing I'll maybe add to this point is, one of the things that I find, founders or partners at these boutique firms tend to struggle to do consistently is have, a strong original POV out there in terms of content and everything, right? And if you think about what you were talking about, and proving yourself wrong or trying to prove yourself wrong consistently, it allows you to evolve that point of view. A point of view is easy to copy, right? Like, and you see it all the
Mhm.
time where somebody is the quote unquote thought leader that starts it, and then if the idea is
Everybody
pro-
grabs
if
on.
the
Yeah.
idea is proven right enough, then everybody grabs on
Yeah.
and tries to own it and add their own little thing to it. They're not actually doing any incremental research most of the time.
Mhm.
So now your position as that thought leader becomes muddy potentially over time. But if you start doing this and continuously trying to prove yourself wrong and tweaking it based on the things that you do find wrong, well, you're always at the forefront, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody else is going to spend that time to do that research, to do that work, because they don't care enough. That's not what they're there
Yeah.
for. They copied you for a reason,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, real thought leadership and real expertise is a constantly evolving thing. It's not stuck in one place and you just hold on to that for the next decade.
Yeah.
That's not the people that we're following, the people we're learning from. They're not stuck. They're
Yeah.
continuing to think. It's funny how many people will start talking about a project with us, and I will say, well, what's your point of view as an organization about this? And they're like, huh, I don't know if we really have one, or, oh, we haven't thought about that in those terms. I guarantee they have one. And I can usually get them talking about it if I get them ranting about what other providers are doing wrong for their clients, for their
Mm,
prospects. But they don't think about things in this way sometimes.
yeah.
And you know, I would encourage you not to go into research just searching for a point of view, spreading this wide net about, hey,
Yeah.
what can we find out there that we can hold on to? Your point of view is based on the work you've done,
It's
who you've
empirical if
done
you
it,
at minimum. Yeah.
who you've done it with, and what you've developed as a belief system around the right way to do it. Um, and so don't just give that away and say, well, we don't have anything. Let's just find something interesting to talk about. You've got
Yeah.
one. You just need to maybe do some work and thinking about it
Hmm.
in that context, because that happens. And I'm like, I'm sure you have a point of view. You just
Hmm.
maybe haven't thought about it.
Yep. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting. Like uh, the people who like some people are just very open and very vocal about it, and some
Hmm.
are not. And it doesn't seem necessarily to matter about years of experience or anything like that. It's just some people are just much stronger in their convictions for one reason or another. I don't know, but
I think also that it's the same thing we see with respect to having a niche.
mm,
People are afraid of eliminating opportunities.
yeah,
They're afraid that having a strong opinion is going to make someone
yeah,
not want to work with them.
yep,
Um, just like they're afraid that narrowing to a particular industry or solving a particular problem is going to
yeah,
limit their opportunities. When we see in the data,
yeah,
the tighter you can do that on a niche, and the stronger you can hold a perspective and communicate an opinion, the more work you're going to get. Because yes, it will make some people go, oh, this is not for me. This
yeah,
person, this firm is not for me, which is great, because then you don't spend time trying to figure out if they're for you because you're talking to them as a prospect. But the people who see what they want and what they're looking for in
hmm,
your perspective and in your expertise see it much more clearly when you're clear about it. And it's amazing how many consultants, agencies, or whatever are kind of reluctant
hmm,
to share that. And it's exactly the opposite of what you should be doing.
hmm,
Because it will bring folks to you, and it will create raving fans
yep.
for what you do, and
Well,
people who recommend you to somebody else, which is a huge part of growing a business like this.
hmm, yeah, 100%. I mean, it's what we mentioned just briefly around authenticity. I mean, that's what it is. Like it's
Hmm.
you being authentic to yourself and to
Yeah.
what you believe. Um, Speaking of authenticity, before we hit record, we were also talking about synthetic research.
Hmm.
Let's talk about that. Um, there's, now I was telling you, like, I've kind of followed that arc of, oh my God, AI solves everything. We don't need to talk to real people anymore. We don't need to survey real people anymore. AI can do all of it. And now you're starting to kind of see the backlash, if you will, of that, where some of it is really people recognizing that it can't actually do all these things, and some of it is just there's just AI backlash in general.
Hmm.
Um, what are your thoughts on synthetic research? And then we can
I
dive
think,
into kind of how you're using, AI in your work.
yeah, I think some of the problem comes from a lot of people don't know a lot about research, don't have a lot of experience with it, and don't have a lot of comfort around it. A lot of people's experience with research is someone telling them they're wrong based on data, and not in a nice, understanding way,
Yeah.
right? Or trying to overwhelm them with statistical terminology and stuff that people just don't understand, and they're made to feel like they're dumb. So I think that's part of the problem. I think this is complicated by the fact that a lot of people don't really understand AI either. It's relatively new for many of
Yeah.
us. Um,
It's
and
new for all of us,
and I
technically.
use AI extensively as a thinking partner, and to help me make sure I am capturing the range of possibilities that could be out there for my respondents in terms of how they think about something, like not just limited to how I think about something, but I can use AI to say, what other perspectives about this category or this problem have I missed in writing up my
Hmm.
own thing? And you get things that's like, oh, I didn't know people really worried about that. They do. So I use AI in a lot of ways. And the value of it is that it knows billions and billions of people. It knows what they say, it knows what they do, it knows how they describe their problems, it knows a ton of data. That can be very helpful for an example like I just told you. What's out there that I'm missing about
Yeah.
this topic? It can also be very helpful when you're doing sort of a first run at like, do people like this? Do they hate this? I mean, you can ask those kinds of questions like, how do people feel about AI use by an agency? Bam, you're going to get tons of information about that, right? Um, the problem is that some types of research are not general and are not gathering information about what people think about something that they've already understood and been asked about, right? Um, some research is about a very specific topic that maybe hasn't been asked about in that way. You know, if you have a tight niche and you're focused on a specific problem and solving it in a particular way, there's a good chance that there isn't really anything public that the LLMs can consume around how people feel about that. You have to go find that for yourself. It's also not very good about necessarily thinking into the future about something like that. Like, if you were in this situation in the future, how would you think about this thing? And that could be really helpful with respect to some kinds of research. Um, so it has its place, and it's great for summarizing data that you have, especially the higher level things like Claude Cowork and some of those kinds of things that aren't just sort of a chatbot can really be good at analyzing data and synthesizing data to see connections that you can't see with the naked eye, right? Because those are trained on statistics and they can spot things that are there even though you can't see them above the surface. But I believe in humans, and I think you need to ask humans some questions that AI is just not going to be, because of what it is and how it's trained, isn't going to be good at answering. There's a lot of ways to get inexpensive answers from digital twins or synthetic respondents or whatever.
Hmm.
I think it's just really important, if you're going to do that, that you're talking with your provider about what you're trying to accomplish and understand very clearly how well you can expect those respondents to answer the kinds of questions you
Yeah.
have. And sometimes it's probably not going to be that well yet.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
there's two thoughts in my mind that kind of I'm curious to get your take on them. And if they're wrong, tell me. Prove me wrong, right? One is I feel like as long as business is about dealing with other humans, you
Hmm.
simply just have to talk to other humans.
Hmm.
I don't know if there's any way around that.
Yeah.
And the other one is it feels like you have to be very careful and have a really solid understanding of the training data behind whatever's behind
Hmm.
this synthetic people, right? If it's
Hmm.
like if you're going to go and ask a large language model, well, that training data is about a year and a half old most of the time.
Hmm.
So whatever it's telling you is based on information from a year and a half ago, and we all know the world's changing much faster than that right now, right? So
Yeah.
whatever, if you're
Well,
going to ask
and
people's opinions on what even how much you're whatever, like basic consumer stuff, like how much are you spending and what are you spending on, like things that would have answered a year and a half ago would have been very different than they are right now. I
yeah.
would guess at least.
Well, yeah, and you're exactly right. And the problem is that where AI is getting its information from, that is presenting from you,
Yeah.
can be very invisible to you. You know, we use so we do quantitative research. We've got big data sets and we're doing a lot of analysis. We use a visualization and analysis platform called AdMaple. ADDMAPLE. And it is AI enabled. But its AI is, number one, trained as a statistician, okay, an expert. And number two, doesn't access anything other than your data. If you're just dumping your data into Claude or GPT, it can be looking at your data, but it can also be giving you stats coming from other people's data that it's
Yeah.
found that you don't know whether that's based on 10 people around a conference table or whether it's a large
Yeah.
statistically tested data source. And AI isn't necessarily going to tell you. It's trying to be helpful. So it's going to say, hey, there's all this and this and this and this. And you may be reporting stuff that isn't in your data or that isn't very good data
Mm-hmm.
that's coming from someplace else. So, we use AdMaple specifically because we know how it's getting the data that it's analyzing and where it can access and what it can't access, right? You need to know those kinds of things if you're running any research study. You don't want a bunch of bots in your study. Well, how are you preventing that? How are you checking to see? And this is a huge conversation in the research industry right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, how do we make sure the data that we're reporting is real data from real
Yeah.
people?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big challenge, and nobody has it
Well,
down perfectly. But to your point, understanding and looking into these kinds of things and having these conversations is going to make you much
mm-hmm.
better prepared to make those decisions for your own research.
Yeah. Actually, maybe a quick tiny tangent on this. I know from doing qualitative research that one of the
Mm,
things that's much more, I feel like, common these days than it used to be is fake respondents. Like people will create,
yes.
just mass create fake LinkedIn profiles, fake all sorts of stuff just so they can get compensated for doing an
Yep.
interview as a, bank CFO or something. So like uh, um, validating that these are real people
Yeah.
is important, but that's much harder to do. I feel like on the quantitative side because you don't see these people. You don't,
Right.
and a lot of it's anonymous a lot of the time, right? Like
Yeah,
you don't
well,
even know
so are
who
our
they are.
surveys,
Yeah.
right? And they're getting better and better at mimicking even open-ended responses.
Yep.
But there are some interesting technologies out there that are
Mm-hmm.
working on, and a lot of the companies that provide respondents for surveys are really, really working hard on this because surveys were one of the first things
Yeah.
that bots that were used to train bots that were trying to hack
Mm-hmm.
into systems or respond to this kind of stuff. So we got used to seeing that data pretty early.
Yep. Well, and I also maybe related to this. I remember, when we worked together for a little bit on a project. I
Mhm.
think you had advised us to not collect respondents through social because of
Mhm.
this, and this was years ago at this point.
Yeah, just
That's
because
big.
there was a ton of
Yeah.
that sort of bot related content. Years ago, I read something when you remember when Uber and Lyft and all those came out. There was
Right.
commentary about how, okay, so for generations we've maniacally taught our children to avoid strangers, and
Mm-hmm.
now we're literally putting them in a car with a stranger.
Yep.
I sort of feel like that's where we are with this synthetic thing, right? It's like we've been working really hard to make sure we get good human data, and now we're just going to offload all of that because it's cheaper and faster
Yeah.
to get some of these synthetic things. And, I think as in the Uber and Lyft thing, there's probably some good reasons to do that in some cases, but
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a universally good replacement.
Yeah. 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 I mean, we can go on a whole tangent here on AI and
Yeah.
the right uses and whatever. But I'll try to keep us on topic. Um, how let's maybe shift gears a little bit. So one of the reasons I want to talk to you is there's the, well, how do you do research well, and there's maybe a few other
Hmm.
things that we'll dive into toward the end here, but then from there it's, well, what do you use it for, right?
Hmm.
So you said, well, you don't,
Hmm.
you know you don't use it to prove yourself right. That makes sense. You
Hmm.
talked about using it to improve your point of view and
Hmm.
over time. But I know that, like, when I recommend it to clients, a lot of it has to do with the business development angle,
Hmm.
in one way, shape, or form. So talk to me about that. I mean, I know you help. your clients with at least some of that.
Yeah.
Open-ended question to get us started, and then we'll dive into whatever makes sense from there.
I mean, ultimately, thought leadership, whether it involves research or not, is about building trust with your audience. And it does that by being helpful to them. It demonstrates that you care about them, that you're invested in understanding the challenges that they're facing, and you are there to provide solutions. And not just after you get an imprint of their credit card, right? What we know now, and this is crazy data from Edelman last year, 59% of people who buy from us believe that we are purposely lying to them to get their money. 59%. That means that, maybe back in 75, if you said you were an expert, people believed you because they knew you and they knew people who knew you, right? Maybe in 2005, we were at least willing to start at ground zero with trust. Now we're below that. Now we're literally below ground zero. Now we're coming in with the distrust. And it's important for us as experts to recognize that. The other thing we know is that 70% buyers are 70% through their decision process before we ever hear from them, before they contact us, before we know they're looking at us. They're almost all the way through their decision process. So we not only have to gain their trust, we have to overcome distrust, and we have to do it before they're willing to talk to us, before they'll reach out by email, before they're willing to have a call with us on the phone or a Zoom. How do you do that? And the only way to do that is with thought leadership, is to put stuff out there that gets shared, that gets commented on, that shows them who you are and that you are invested in helping them and that you have something that will help before they pay you, before they even call you and are willing to have you talk to them on the phone. And that's why thought leadership is so powerful. People don't like that term, but whatever you call it, it's incredibly powerful. When you look at the impact, so thought leadership is consumed by experts. Edelman did a study with LinkedIn last year called Invisible Influence that looked at the impact of this idea of thought leadership. The majority of respondents in that study say they're spending more than an hour a week consuming it. 54% say it's part of their vetting process when they are looking at vendors. And 95%, Mike, 95% say that thought leadership makes them more receptive to sales and marketing outreach. Meaning if they have encountered us being helpful and relevant before the conversation, they are more willing to look at what we send them when it's time to talk about buying what we do.
Yeah.
And hiring us to do it.
None of that surprises me even for a second. I wrote about this, I don't know, months ago, where this idea of trust me, I'm an expert just doesn't fly anymore, right? I think
that's why people don't like the term thought leadership, because
right.
People have said, I'm a thought leader, I'm an expert. And then we've all been to a conference where somebody is just selling from the stage. They're not being helpful. We know what actually builds trust. It's give me something new, give me new perspective, new data, new information. Give me something that's helpful in my business that I can use actually in my business. And I want it from somebody who seems like me, which is sort of this amalgamation of they understand my industry and my problems. They've been in my shoes and they're nice and helpful and real and authentic and generous, right? That's it in a nutshell. And our AI's made our job so much harder with respect to showing up authentically, because it's no longer just how we show up, it's how everybody else is showing up. And I will tell you, as a 40-year marketing veteran, this is our fault as marketers. We have abused every single tool we've ever been given to convince people to buy stuff. We've abused it. We've taken advantage of them. Spam emails and ads and all of this kind of stuff. No wonder they don't trust,
Mhm.
right? And AI is making it almost impossible to tell whether what you're seeing is real or not.
Mhm.
And the only way to break through that is to continually be generous without asking for anything in return. That builds trust. Sharing, I tell my clients who are working on thought leadership with based on research that research is not the thought leadership. It's just data, right? It's the first step in the process. But what they want that's more important than that is what we think about that data based on our experience and our expertise. And the thing they really come for is our advice based on that. So you can't just do research and say, hey, here's data. That is not thought leadership, and it's not going to differentiate you from anybody else. You need to give them you, which is your genuine reaction to what the data says and your perspective on it, and what you would tell someone if they were sitting on the other side of your desk and considering hiring you about what to do in light of this
Yep.
data that you're seeing. We cannot abdicate our role as experts in thought leadership to the data. It's not enough. What it is have you ever watched Olympic diving, Mike? You've
Mhm.
ever seen that?
Yep.
So the crazy thing about that is just looking at those people standing up on that incredibly high platform, you know they're experts because nobody else would get up there. How are you going to get down? If you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to stand up there that
Yep.
far above the pool, right? That's what thought leadership research gives you. It gives you a platform that looks different than anybody else has and shows that you've invested a lot in
Yeah.
understanding something.
Mhm.
You are still the diver. You still have to take the dive and show people what you do with that platform. And I think some folks forget about that part, but that's really what they want from us. And that's what
Yeah.
we want from the people that we follow as thought leaders and as experts. It's not just data, it's insight and it's advice.
Yeah. I think there are a number of things that I think are happening right now that are causing us to look at this in a different way as consumers of the
Mm,
information. Right.
mm,
I think um, it kind of fits into my narrative in terms of when
mhm,
there's so much choice, when there's so many people out there claiming to be experts. As a buyer, you go, I don't know what decision to make, right? I mean, all the studies have been done where if there's too much choice, people buy less, not
mhm.
more,
Right.
right?
The paradox
So
of choice.
paradox of choice, one of my favorites. Um,
Me too.
So one thing I want to posit to, and then I want to get into the kind of the tactical business
Mhm,
development stuff. What I see happening, and I think it's a temporary stopgap, if you will. If I look at the
mm,
consultancies that are being successful
mhm,
right now, it's not the only reason, but I think a lot of them are practitioners in the
mhm,
sense of they came from industry, they didn't come from consulting. I mean,
mhm,
I've got a couple of clients right now that are like that. There's a number of others that I've worked with. Um, they tend to be the ones that struggle the least.
mhm,
They, at least in initial phases of growth. They also tend to be the ones that get the most referrals,
mhm,
et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's that what you're describing is there's what people want is you've sat on my side of the table before, you've been in my shoes, you understand me, you can
mhm.
give me a unadulterated, if you will, point of view. But also think it's a stopgap because as that choice of those people increases, you still have the same problem,
Yeah.
right?
Um, the other thing that we're seeing that's really accelerated. So I've been doing a study with agency clients for 13 years called the Agency Edge with Agency Management Institute. So we've seen some trends. And one of the things that's really moved up in terms of importance to clients is having other people they trust refer to you as an expert,
Mhm.
right? Because
And that's what
anybody
thought
can say
leadership
they're an
is, right? You can't claim
anybody
it.
can say they're an expert, right? So a big part of thought leadership, and one of the reasons that research is so powerful in helping to build it and build its visibility, is that your job is to get other people to trust you who serve your same audience, right?
Yeah.
And they can look at your research, they can look at your investment and dedication and generosity to the same audience that they serve and say, hey, this person really has some valuable stuff to say. I'm going to have them on my podcast. I'm going to have them on my LinkedIn live. I'm going to,
Yeah.
do a webinar with them. I'm going to have them speak at my conference. Um, there is a big discrepancy in the extent to which clients say, I trust you because of what you say about yourself, and I trust you because of what other people say about you. That wasn't necessarily true when the decision between two butchers in your small town was based on word of mouth. That was our friends and neighbors doing that. These
Yeah.
days, they want to look at people they already trust for advice and find out who else they can trust.
Yep.
And research can help you do that on the front end when you get those people involved in what you're doing and engaged in distributing the survey that you've written or helping you come up with things that they'd like to know. And on the back end, when they can say, hey, look at this great research that's out there in the perspective, and I want to get that in front of my audience and build those. So building those relationships is really important. And I think sometimes people don't think of their own. We're also worried about our
Yeah.
sandbox, that
Yeah.
sometimes we don't think about the power of what we're doing and what we're saying has with other people who influence our audiences. And
Yep.
it's a very rewarding, it can be rewarding for your business in terms of referrals and word of mouth and trust, but it's rewarding as a person too, to feel like you're
Yep.
collaborating with other folks who are trying to help the same people you're trying to help.
Yeah. I think it's a great segue to something I wanted to talk about, which is trenched into the ecosystem or their ecosystem, or whoever they are in
Mm-hmm.
this case, the client,
Mm-hmm.
our clients.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a couple of things come to mind, some from recent conversations I've had. I think um, a lot of founders of these boutique firms, like everybody's trying to build partnerships, whether they be technology
Yeah.
partnerships, partnerships with associations, et cetera, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these partnerships never actually go anywhere and turn into anything worthwhile. I'll go, I'll have a conversation very commonly around, well, who are your partners? Oh, they just rattle off a list. I'm like, great. How many referrals have you gotten from them? Oh, almost none.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, why is that? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what they miss, I think, is um, number one, partnerships are a two-way street. So there's that, like you have to
Right.
give as much as you
That's
get.
right.
And the question is, what can you give as a boutique firm? Yes, you can bring in clients. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, like they want that, but they all know that there's a limited number. Like your network is just not that big when you compare it to a large, firm. So what can you do? They all need content.
Yep.
Every single one of them, whether it's a technology partner, they've got a whole content marketing program. Whether
Mm-hmm.
it's a association, they definitely need content because that's literally
Mm-hmm.
part of what the value that they sell. Understanding that and understanding what type of content is valuable to each of these types of organizations, whether they be a technology partner, association, etc., is extremely valuable. And I feel
Mm.
like that's missed most of the
Yeah.
time.
It's a huge missed opportunity. Thought leadership research, and sometimes I have to convince clients of this. The whole point is to share it and make it public, right? And not just keep it to
Yeah.
yourself. Because if you keep it to yourself, it's only helping you in that one way. If you share it, the other people serving your audience can use that data to talk about what they believe, but they're referring back to you as the source of that data. And you can have I've done some great studies where competitors worked together on a
Mhm.
research study that they could all use together. On our latest agency research, Agency Core, we have 19 partners that serve agencies that are working on that study with us. And it builds credibility. it builds visibility, and it builds your reputation. And it's one of the things that if you can do that, or get together with a few other firms that serve the same agency to do that, you've got something everybody wants,
Mhm.
which is data. And it's a real gift to others in the space when you say, hey, I've done this. I would love to have you come on a podcast with me and talk about what you think about this data, what you're telling your clients about this data, because you're an expert in this or in that on this topic. It's great. It's a great way to build collaboration, and it also builds your visibility, and it builds a real reputation for you as someone people can trust because you're generous, and you're listening to other perspectives, and that's huge.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
interesting that it shouldn't be that surprising if you think about it. I mean, the majority of, the big research out there, and I use big loosely, I guess, but
Yeah.
is,
Pew Research,
yeah, but it's created
Nielsen. Yep.
by, you know, uh, industry groups that, and
Hmm.
they're being funded by the industry. So it's, whatever.
Hmm.
If there's some study on the impact of organic, I'm making this up, I don't know, but like
Hmm.
organic beef on whatever something,
Hmm.
well, guess what? All the ranchers out there are supporting that, and it's that industry group that's
Hmm.
putting it out, right? It's so
Hmm.
it's actually really common that competitors are going in on research together. You just don't
Hmm.
see it very often at the kind of that boutique level of kind of the
Yeah.
industry that we're in. I feel like.
And unlike some of that research, which, let's be fair, some of that is specifically done to validate a
Yep.
point of view for public
Hmm.
relations purposes or whatever,
Yeah.
it's great for you to show who else you're collaborating with, because again, you're borrowing from the
Hmm.
trust that they've gained with their audiences,
Yeah.
because by collaborating with you, they're showing that they trust you as a
Yeah.
provider, and that's it. It's great. It's like a win-win-win for everybody. Our audiences get great insight that helps them do better in their business. Our partners get the ability to talk more about the topics that
Yeah.
we believe in and reference us in those conversations, and we get to be the source of all this great stuff, and have built that big diving platform that so many people are diving off of, who already have that recognized reputation.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you just briefly mentioned it as you were talking, but it's from, again, thinking about it from that business development uh, lens.
Hmm.
Doing this work opens up all sorts of paths to conversation with the right people,
Hmm.
whether it be partners, whether it be prospective clients,
Hmm.
paths that were not there before, right? Because your only path otherwise was either by accident, like
Right.
through referrals or running into somebody at a conference,
Right.
or kind of that cold outreach type
Outbound.
route. Yeah,
Yeah.
or advertise,
Yeah.
whatever it is, but it's strictly that sales message versus,
Yeah.
hey, let me tell you something interesting that you might find valuable,
Yeah. I mean,
right?
the
Or would you like to participate in something that would help you learn something
yeah.
valuable about your industry, etc.
Yeah, and we have lots of data specifically around agencies, which are ultimately consultants. That's what we're all of us are expert consultants, whatever
Yep.
we call our firm, a consultancy, whatever. Um, but in the case of agencies, the ones that are consistently doing thought leadership, consistently putting content out there that talks about their niche, that talks about their point of view, and with data supporting it, are having far fewer issues than anyone else with pipeline, with getting paid what they're worth by clients, with building revenue year over year of existing clients, because building trust isn't just important with
Mm-hmm.
prospects, it's important with clients too.
Mm-hmm.
If you lose it, they will leave, right? So the folks who are doing all of this well are the ones that have a strong point of view and are talking about it and are doing so consistently, not just dropping one thing a year and saying, great, that's it, I'm an expert now, but are
Yeah.
really engaging with their audience in a way that's helpful and generous
Yeah.
all the time. And that reputation stays with you. It really, really does. And it makes a huge difference in your business. I mean, we do very little outbound work here because most of our audience finds us and comes to us. And sometimes, and I have clients who will call me and say, okay, somebody called us up and said, when can we get started? We didn't have to do any selling.
Yeah.
because they already know what we believe in. They already knew the kind of work that we do, and they get a feeling about us that has built trust. So we're good to go, you
Yeah.
know. And clients will pay more for the folks that they trust. They absolutely will. That expertise, that generosity pays off in the fees that you can command for your work.
Yeah.
And not enough of us are taking advantage of that, I think.
Yep. Um, Something you mentioned, I think, is worthwhile maybe double clicking on a little bit, which is that this is valuable for existing clients. I think that
Mhm.
that's definitely something that's missed. Where, like I mentioned, I do a decent amount of qualitative research for in my
Mhm.
work, and every maybe not every single executive, but in every single project that I've done, it's a common theme that what they want from their consulting firms is teach me something new. Teach me
That's
something
right.
new, help me do my job better, not
That's
just
right.
give me the result. I'm paying you for that. That value exchange is kind of already there. But as we keep going, you want more work from me, you're gonna have to give me something out. Like that
Yeah.
that theme is always there. And this is a great
Yeah.
way to do that.
And I think AI is really highlighting the importance of that. You know, a lot of us, I know a lot of us in the agency world have worried about, oh, AI is going to get us fired. Clients are going to want to replace us. In fact, we see exactly the opposite. They want our deep expertise and our strategy. They know that they can't get that from AI. What they don't want, or want at very much a lower level, is take down your prices for me, do work faster with me. What they universally want is better thinking, better ideas, more successful ideas. Um, and I think that that real strategic strength is going to continue to be what separates the haves from the have-nots in the advisory community, whether you're a consultant or an agent or an agency or whatever, a speaker, anything like that. The folks that are going to succeed have something that AI can't do,
Yeah.
which is that deep strategic expertise and advice for forward motion, new ideas, innovations around this. Um, that that that's what they want, even when they know we're using AI. In fact, that's specifically what they want from our use of
Yep.
AI. They want better thinking.
Yep.
Um, and the folks who are really relying on just tactical execution for stuff are 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 very quickly going to look like everybody else
Yep.
and be replaceable. And our job, if we want to keep our businesses going, our teams employed, their families supported, our audiences supported, is to keep our business open and healthy and resilient. And so
Yep.
that's something we really need to think about as we move forward.
Yep. So I do want to talk to you about the AI research that you've done recently, but
Yeah,
before we jump into that, quick take from you, if you will. Let's
yeah.
say I am the founder of a boutique consulting firm.
Hmm.
I bought into this. I want to do a research project.
Yep.
Um, Give me 2 to 3 things that maybe are either counterintuitive or something I might not think about that I need to be doing to make this program successful for me. Things that we haven't talked about yet, because we talked about a number of things,
Hmm.
and maybe 2 to 3 things that I need to avoid doing to make this successful.
Hmm. Um, well, I think the first thing that you should do if you're thinking about it, and this is very counterintuitive, prospects are always surprised when I say this, is talk to a researcher. Most researchers will absolutely be thrilled to chat with you through your thinking about a project, even if they know you're not in the market to buy right now. But how are you going to know? How are you going to know whether your approach should be qualitative, should be quantitative? How are you going to know what your options are for getting the people you want responses from into your research, whatever that looks like? How are you going to know what it costs and how long it takes? You don't. And if you're just guessing, there's a huge range. I mean, we do work for small to mid-size companies typically, and
Mhm.
solopreneurs like speakers or authors who have their own sort of consultancies. Because that is our audience, what we charge for research is very different than what Coca-Cola is paying for their
Right.
research, right? So if you just throw it into AI, you don't know what you're going to get. Talk to researchers. Find researchers. They will talk to you about this. This is what we do all day long, is we talk clients and prospects through the ideas that are swirling in terms of a research project. So don't be afraid to call and ask those kinds of questions. I talk to people all day long about that kind of stuff. What does it
Yeah.
cost? How long is it going to take? Can we get these respondents? Can we survey this? Is this something we can, and they'll tell you, and researchers will tell you, that's not my ball, but you should talk to X
Hmm.
about this. I don't do qualitative, but I know qualitative researchers who are great that I could have you talk to. So that's number one. I think that you need to think realistically about what you're going to do with it. The worst thing for somebody like me is to work with you over the course of months and have you pay me what I know is money that you could use for other things in your business, right? Give you this research and then have you not get the benefit of having it because your organization doesn't know how to do content or can't stick to content or whatever. If you're going to invest in this, understand what it takes to get a return of investment from it, because your research firm is not responsible for the return on investment you get from your research, right? Their job is to produce the diving board, so to speak. You still have to do the dive. And if you're putting all your hopes on having to do no more outbound selling because everybody's come to you, you have to recognize that there are pieces of that puzzle to get you from point A to point B that you are responsible for.
Yeah.
So you really need to think about those, because otherwise you're going to spend money that you aren't going to get a benefit from. And none of us can afford to do that. I don't care how big or small you are as an organization. So when you're talking to providers about research, find out what it takes to get what you want out of it, right? What's going to be required. You may need to have an agency to help you write stuff up. You may need to have somebody visualize results from you in a way that people can engage with it. You may need someone to help you get on the podcast that you want to be on, or help you develop your speaking skills so that you can present some of this stuff at a conference. So just think about that process, because the research is a means to an end. It is not in and of itself the end. And sometimes I think people fail to think about that, either from a timing standpoint, right? It's going to take you a little while to pull all that stuff together once you know what the results are, or from a cost and investment standpoint.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. The other thing I will say, Mike, that people are sometimes surprised to hear me say, you can build thought leadership on research that you didn't do. So if you have no budget for research, go find some that has data around what you want to talk about. It may not be perfectly assigned. We've been talking about a lot of agency research today, and a lot of your audience isn't an agency. But there's data out there, and sure, anybody can have it, but that's true of your thought leadership research once you publish it too, right? So find other folks that are talking about this, because again, the data is just one part of your thought leadership. Your perspective and your advice are the other two. And I would argue, while the first one gets a lot of attention, the last two are what your audience is really coming to you for, and what you're building trust with. So you can collect research, and AI makes this so much easier. Just validate what you find, validate that the stats, go to the actual research study, look at methodology, make sure they have a good number of respondents. You got to do some work on this front, but AI makes it a ton easier. And then start talking about data that you're finding. If you build an assessment for your audience, a questionnaire, you can use your own data and talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to hire somebody like us. You don't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to do something like this. You can start building your thought leadership based on data today. If you find data that's out there, just double check.
Yeah.
what you're getting,
Yeah.
so that you're not out there with something that somebody says you got that totally wrong. That doesn't exist. That's an unfortunate circumstance. We don't want that.
Yep. Um, Thank you for that.
Hmm.
Let's briefly, I'd love to chat with you about kind of the key insights from your research that you've done recently
Yeah, yeah.
around. Again, it's for agencies, but like I agree
Hmm.
with you. I think there's a lot of overlap in terms of
Yeah,
how this fits for consultancy. So, what are the what was the research, and what are the whatever one or two kind of most interesting things that you found?
yeah. So the research is called the Agency Edge. It's that 13-year study I've been doing with Drew McClellan from Agency Management Institute. And over the last 2 years, we've been exploring how clients think about AI. Last year, there was a lot of confusion. They didn't know what to think. They didn't know how many of their agencies were using it. They didn't know how they were using it because agencies weren't talking about that very much because everybody was afraid they were going to get fired if their clients found out they were using AI. This year shows a very, very different picture. Clients are much more familiar with AI and have been using it for a year. The vast majority of them know that we are using AI. I think the big message that we're getting from the research and that we have to remember as these shiny new objects of technology come around. I remember this from the days when website you could first start a website, right? The folks who were successful during that time frame when digital marketing was just exploding, um, were the ones who kept their eye on what their agencies had hired them to do in the first place, which is different for each client, but could be we want you to elevate our brand and increase its visibility and protect it, secure our brand. We want you to innovate for us and make us the most innovative company in our space. We want to get a return on every single dollar we spend for advertising, or our social media posting, or whatever those things are. Our clients, whether you're an agency, you're a consultant, our clients hire us to get them somewhere, to provide value that they can't get on their own. And I think what this year's data shows is that we have to be careful not just to talk about the shiny new objects in terms of tools we're using. We need to talk about them in the context of how they're helping us deliver that value that clients have wanted from us. Because if we lose sight of that, then we're just spinning and talking amongst ourselves, and clients feel like we've gotten distracted and aren't paying attention to what's really important to them. So I think it's a good opportunity to talk to clients about the value that they see in us. It may be shifting. They may have hired us a few years ago to do the creative for a lot of their ads, for example. Or in your world, it might be um, build sales guides, documents, and print them if that's what you're helping them teach their team to do well. That may not be of as much value now as the thinking behind those things and the expertise that you've shown them is. So we need to keep our eyes on what our clients are keeping their eyes on, which is fundamentally where am I trying to get, and what part are you playing in that? I think that's really important. A lot of us assume that clients want to take our prices down and want to use us less. And while that is not untrue in some cases, what we're seeing on the agency side of things is overwhelmingly clients see tremendous value in working with us to be successful. They see us as additive. And my guess is that is true in consulting as well. Um, and so we need to sort of ground ourselves in not feeling like we're constantly threatened, because I think when we're threatened, we feel like we have to take our rates down. We have to offer big discounts because to sort of apologize or compensate for our use of AI, there's no validation for that. I mean, it's not that a client wouldn't take a price cut, but that's not what they want from us with AI. They want better, you know. Um, and then the last thing I would say is that over years of research in every industry you can imagine, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of studies, Mike, what we've seen, because we do segmentation work, we look at an audience and say, what's going on in here? Audiences are not monolithic. They do not all want the same thing or approach a decision in the same way just because they're all the same size company or they're all in the same size industry. They can feel very different about something. And it's really important for us as advisors to understand that not everybody feels the same way, because you cannot lose a prospect fast enough as you can if you show up and have the assumption that they think like everybody else does. We all know that, right? That'll kill you with the prospect. So even in the age of AI, people feel differently about AI. Even in the age of AI, they feel differently about what they want out of our use of it. And if you start thinking that your audience is monolithic, as AI may tell you, if you ask that question, you may get a monolithic answer. Dig deeper, understand where there are differences. You know some of this from your own experience, but we have to talk to people where they are, and they're not all in the same place on any of this. So getting some data that allows you to sort of see those differences and which people feel that this is better than that and which people feel the opposite is really helpful in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to get sidetracked by, you know, one or two questions from prospects of, because I mean, even I remember there was a client that asked me at one point, so how well could we do this if we just took your frameworks and, you know, dumped them into whatever chat GPT, I forget what their question was, and like just did that. I'm like, it's a good question. I've tried maybe 50 to 60% of the way there. Like that was my answer at the time. It was,
Yeah.
maybe a year and a half ago, something like that.
Right.
But it's very easy for like to take that conversation and go, oh my God, people are gonna start trying to, you know, pay me less, or it's gonna be harder for me to get clients. I need to lower my pricing, and you have to be very careful. I agree with you on making these types of drastic decisions, because
Yeah.
that's an N of one, and even if it's an N of two, that doesn't necessarily mean that your entire audience is thinking that way.
Yeah. And I think this age means that we as advisors need to open our minds a little bit to what services we can provide of value. For example, clients have a lot of questions and concerns about the use of AI. And my friend Drew McClellan, who does that study with me, mentioned this year that, you know, he's seen a lot of situations where clients are shutting down their in-house marketing organizations because they are not ready to deal with the potential liability that can come because somebody uses AI inappropriately in their marketing. They're basically saying, let's give that to an agency that we can hold responsible that knows what they're doing, because we're not taking on that burden. And I think that that may be true of our clients as consultants too, right? Like, so there's an opportunity there for us as advisors to be the ones saying, AI can be really helpful in getting us to your point B, but we have to be careful. Let me help you be careful. Let me help you know how to use AI effectively and responsibly that doesn't put you at risk.
I've definitely heard of that in like product development, for example.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, talking to clients, asking clients questions is always a good practice, because I think there are new opportunities. We may be losing some of the tactical parts of our job, right? But I think that there are even more opportunities that we haven't thought about yet because they weren't something that existed before, right? I mean, a lot of agencies have made a lot of money protecting client websites, right?
Yep.
Well, here's a new age, right? Where there are opportunities to further protect and ensure our clients stay in the safe lane that they're comfortable with. That isn't maybe something we even thought about doing a year ago. Lots of opportunity.
I think so. Susan,
Let me
thank you.
ask you, Mike. Let me ask you quickly. We have, most agencies are feeling really optimistic about opportunities for their business over the next 5 years. How would you say the consultants that you know in your industry are feeling about things moving forward?
I think the majority of conversations I have about it are, I would say, are fairly optimistic. I think most of them are not. They're not afraid that they're getting replaced anytime soon. I do
Mhm.
think there, I don't think, I know there's definitely a conversation around um, what this means for them and the type of
Sure.
work that they need to provide to clients and the type of value they need to provide to clients and how. Um, I just had last person that was on my show was Ben Edwards from CMAP. They're
Mhm.
a platform for consultancies from like an operational platform. And we talked quite a bit about this where like in his work, he's definitely seeing a lot of them, a lot of consultancies trying to jump onto like, oh my God, let's try to productize something with AI. And he's like, the best ones out there are not doing that. They're just, they're getting more clients. And sure, they're maybe
Mhm.
looking ways to AI enable some of the delivery work that they do, but they're not out there just building AI
Right.
products and trying to like AI productize themselves and
Become an
stuff like
AI
that.
shop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure.
so there is, I mean, some of them are, and I think that's
Mhm.
maybe okay in the sense of like, okay, well, your clients need this. Can you offer some level of AI
Mm.
implementation for that
You bet.
industry, for the, to support what you already do? Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
And so
and the
those
strategic
conversations are definitely
chops to do
happening.
that is what drives
Yeah.
that.
I think
But if
what's
you're
under pressure, to answer your question, what's under pressure is the more traditional, like large consulting pyramid model. That's definitely
Mhm.
under pressure, but the boutique firms
Mhm.
don't have that for the most part.
Right,
At
right.
least the
And
smaller
I think if
ones.
if you're listening to this and you're maybe not feeling very optimistic or feeling like AI is really a threat to what you do, I would encourage you to reconsider that perspective because there's a lot of opportunity here for experts
Yeah.
like we've been talking about for the last hour. And if you haven't found it, go talk to some other folks in your industry. Go listen to folks who are leading your industry because I think you'll hear something different. We certainly are seeing something really, we're seeing strong optimism.
Yeah.
I think you just have to see the opportunity, not just the threat.
100%. Susan, this has been fun. Hopefully the folks listening will have gotten something out of it as well.
Yes.
And if you are thinking, you being the person listening, are thinking of doing a research project and you need to talk to a researcher, talk to Susan
Mhm.
or any
Thank
other
you. Yeah.
researcher, but definitely talk to
I'm
Susan.
happy to chat and happy to send you to somebody who does stuff I don't. First, any researcher will do that. So
Yeah.
yes, ask questions, but
I
think
should
about how you
specify
can incorporate this.
quantitative researcher.
Yeah,
You can talk to Susan. If you want to talk to
yeah.
qualitative folks, I've got recommendations for that
Mike's
too.
got some
So
good folks for
yeah,
sure. Excellent. Okay, thanks for
yeah.
having me on, Mike. I really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Susan.
Fun convo.